This video is going to explore the life of Pompey Magnus. Uh, the name Magnus in Latin means the Great, and Pompey really was someone who I think could take the title the Great. He did a lot of really important things in Roman history. He lived through a lot of important events and took part in them. But he's largely someone who is forgotten by history, mainly because he was a big opponent of Julius Caesar. He was maybe Caesar's greatest adversary. Um, so we're going to learn today about the rise of Pompey the Great, Pompey Magnus, um, how he goes from just sort of an aristocratic child all the way to becoming the most powerful man in Rome. All right, so Pompey's early life. He's born in a small town called Picenum in Italy uh, in 106. So he's the son of a guy named Pompeius Strabo. And Pompey's name at birth is also Pompeius Strabo. Um, so Pompeius Strabo, Pompey's father, was a Novus Homo. If you recall, when we talked about Marius, a Novus Homo is someone who attains the rank of consul without having any um, members of the consulship in their family. And so his father became a consul, which makes Pompey's family noble. So Pompey kind of grows up as the son of a newly minted nobleman. Strabo basically comes to power. He does well politically because of his reputation in the military. So he was a great general, but Strabo had a dark side. He was particularly known for being ruthless in war and incredibly greedy. So you wouldn't really want to go up against Strabo because if you lost, there would be no mercy given, and pretty much he would take anything that's not nailed down. All right, so Pompey early in life kind of gets the nickname the Great even before he uh, does anything really considered great. And it originally starts out as kind of a joke. People start calling him Magnus the Great because they think his hair somewhat resembled Alexander the Great's hair. So Pompey has like this hair flip thing that people thought was similar to Alexander the Great's hair. So they started calling him like Pompey the Great as a joke, making fun of his hair. But Pompey kind of like owned it and sort of reclaimed it, made it his own. And then he does go off and do some really great things, so it becomes a fitting nickname. All right, so one very important event that Pompey is around for, he's a young military tribune, is the Social War. Um, the Social War doesn't really have anything to do with like what we think of the word social to mean. Um, the word social in this context is actually referring to the word socius in Latin, Socius, socius. And socius is the Latin word for an ally. All right, so this is a war against Rome's Italian allies, their socii. So in 91 BC, there's a big revolt that breaks out in Italy. Basically, the Italians, those that aren't uh, part of Rome, those who are they just have ally status instead of status within the empire, they don't really like uh, the way things are. They don't really have much of a say in politics. So they really want voting rights. This is kind of a parallel with the American Revolution, um, with this idea of like taxation without representation that the Americans fought for against the British. It's a very similar type of situation here, where the Socii, the allies, the Italian allies, are saying like, "Listen, we're fighting your wars, we're paying you tribute money, but we don't really have a say in what the Romans are doing." So they revolt. They take the city of Corfinum, and they create it as a new capital, which they rename Italica. All right, so Pompey's father is sort of one of the top military leaders of the time. So he's given a command of an army to fight the social war. Um, Pompey serves under his father, so he gets like a minor posting in the army. At the Senate, as the war is going on, they decide, all right, let's just give these Italians their voting rights. That way we can end the war. So the Senate passes a law called the Lex Julia, and it's actually proposed by uh, Julius Caesar's father. And that gives voting rights to the Allies, which is what they said they wanted. However, now that the war has started, there's still a number of Italian allies who don't want peace. They think they have a chance to win and sort of defeat the Romans and take control for themselves. And actually, here we have a coin from the Social War. And the cool thing about this coin is it's not made by the Romans. It's actually a surviving coin that was minted by the Italian allies. And this is a rare opportunity that we have to kind of see what propaganda from the Italian ally side looked like, um, which is something we don't get to see because really the Romans write the history of this. We don't have any accounts from them from the allies. So it's cool to see a little bit of uh, their view on things. So here we have a coin on the one side. We have the head of some Italian goddess. But on the back, that's kind of the interesting thing. So we have here, if you can make it out, uh, that's a bull. Um, you can probably tell that. Under the bull, there's something that kind of looks like an alligator, but it's actually this is supposed to be a wolf. All right, so the bull represents Italy. All right, so this bull represents Italy. Italy, actually, the name Italy comes from a very old Italic word, predates Latin, Vitalu, um, and basically that word means land of the bulls, right? Because Italy was known as a place where they had a lot of bulls. All right, so this bull represents Italy, and as we said, the wolf represents Rome. All right, so why a wolf for Rome? Well, the whole myth of Romulus and Remus. The other kind of cool thing about this coin is it's actually not written in Latin. It's written in uh, a language that was spoken in southern Italy It's a relative of Latin, and it's called oscin. So if we look at this coin, it's actually written from right to left instead of left to right as Latin was written. But we can make out some letters on this coin. Yeah, so starting from the right, we have I don't know, it looks like kind of an arrow. It's basically the Oscan letter C. And then we have this one that is related to the Greek letter pi, and that's the Oscan for P. Then we have an A. Now we have another A written in Oscan. We have another P, and the last letter here is an I. And so that's C, and then there's a dot here, which is kind of like a space. Paapi, C pa P. And that's actually the name of one of the generals that was fighting the social war on behalf of the Allies. A guy who the Roman sources call Gaius Papius, but in his native Oscan language, it would probably be something like Poppy. And so the war goes on. Rome eventually does end up winning. It's a major victory for both the Romans and the Allies, because the Allies do still retain the right to vote. All right, so once that's over, then we kind of get down to that first civil war that we talked about between Marius and Sulla. So during that war, Strabo, Pompey's father, is a supporter of Sulla. So he besieges Rome on Sulla's behalf once Marius takes over. But at some point, for whatever reason, he dies. There's some disagreement in the sources. Some say he was struck down by plague. Others say he was struck by lightning. We're not sure which it was. I'd say probably plague would be much more reasonable, just because plague went through armies quite a bit in the ancient world before they realized you can't drink polluted water. So plague was pretty common. So I would say that's the more likely candidate. But there are also sources that say it's lightning, which isn't it's not impossible. It could have been. So basically, Pompey inherits his father's estate, and the troops declare him general in charge of the army. All right, so after that war, Sulla leaves for Asia to go beat up Mithridates, like we talked about last time. Marius comes back, and he retakes Rome. All right, Sulla comes back, and we have that whole second civil war kind of thing where he has to retake the city of Rome from Marius. All right, so when Sulla returns, Pompey raises up 3 legions in his hometown of Picenum, and he comes and joins with Sulla to retake the city of Rome. All right, Pompey is also joined by a guy named Crassus, who eventually is going to be his sometimes ally, but most of the time rival in the future. Right. And even though it's Crassus who's really instrumental in winning the victory, Sulla seemed to like Pompey more, and Pompey becomes Sulla's like protege. Sulla gives him a lot of really powerful commands and Pompey starts kind of basically acting as Sulla's right-hand man. All right, so Sulla has a problem right now, and that's he's taken the city of Rome, but throughout the empire, there are still a lot of supporters of Marius, particularly in places like Sicily and Africa and Spain. So a bunch of these revolts break out, and basically Pompey is sent to put the revolts down. All right, so in Sicily, Pompey goes to Sicily and he recaptures the cities. And like his father, he really treats the rebels pretty harshly. His father had a reputation for being ruthless. His father actually had the nickname the Butcher, Carnifex. Basically, the people of Messana in Sicily were getting treated really poorly for revolting. Basically, they said that Pompey had no legal jurisdiction um, to be doing anything to them. And Pompey apparently responded in Greek, ou palses the heimen hupozomenos ziphe nomos anagignoscontes, which just means stop quoting the laws to us, we have swords. And that really encapsulates the way Pompey kind of viewed things. It was very much a might makes right kind of way of looking at things. And just because something isn't strictly legal, if I have the power to do it, I'm going to do it. And from this Sicilian campaign, he gets the nickname Adolescens Carnifex, the young butcher. His father was the butcher. He's called the young butcher. All right, Pompey wants a triumph for his victory, his various campaigns against the supporters of Marius. But Sulla says no. It's not really grounds for a triumph. First of all, because he's not a consul, and you need to be a consul to get a triumph, and Pompey isn't even old enough to run for the consulship. Secondly, it was a war against Romans, so it had to be to get a triumph. You have to conquer a foreign enemy. Plus, it doesn't look great parading Romans through the streets in chains in your triumph. So Sulla turned him down. Pompey basically threatens him, saying like more people worship the rising sun than the setting sun, which kind of means like my career is on the rise, yours is going downhill, so watch it, buddy. And Sulla gives him a triumph. In the triumph, Pompey doesn't want to be outdone, so he has a chariot pulled by elephants instead of the traditional chariot pulled by horses. Another big event that happens during Pompey's lifetime, and he's only sort of tangentially involved with it, is the Spartacus Revolt. So likely you've heard of the gladiator uprising with Spartacus. And that happens in 73 BC in the town of Capua, just south of Rome. A bunch of gladiators revolt. They climb to the top of Mount Vesuvius, which isn't far from Capua. At this time, they just think it's a mountain because it won't blow up for another, I don't know, about 150 years. All right, they climb to the top of Mount Vesuvius, and a Roman army camps down at the bottom. They're able to sneak down the mountain in the middle of the night and completely annihilate that Roman army. After that victory, a bunch of slaves run away. They leave their masters and they flock to Spartacus, and he grows a pretty substantial army. All right, so the Senate sends Crassus, Pompey's kind of rival at this time period, to put down the revolt. At this time, Pompey's not around. He's off in Spain. So Crassus kind of uses that as an opportunity to get that posting, and he goes off to fight Spartacus. All right, so he hems Spartacus in at the toe of Italy, traps him down at the toe. Spartacus makes a deal with some pirates down in the toe of Italy, and they're going to help him cross over to Sicily, and he hopes in Sicily he'll be able to do another revolt, get more slaves to join his cause. But the pirates end up double-crossing Spartacus, so he's trapped, and he has to fight. While all this is happening, the Senate is worried that Spartacus's army is so large, it's going to defeat Crassus's forces. So they recall Pompey from Spain to help with the revolt. Before Pompey gets there, Crassus beats Spartacus's army, and he captures and crucifies over 6,000 slaves. Around 5,000 of the slaves escape, and they run away. And as they're running away, they run into the forces of Pompey, and Pompey kills at least 5,000 of them and declares that he put down the revolt. So basically, he tries to take credit for Crassus's victory. All right, this is a picture of it's from a movie showing the aftermath of the Spartacus Revolt. After Crassus captures and crucifies the slaves and gladiators, he basically puts them along the road. So from the city of Rome all the way down to Capua, every couple of feet you see a body on a cross. And Crassus uses this as a message: don't revolt against Rome. All right, so there are some other revolts all around the empire at this time. This is a really unstable time in Rome, as you can see from all these various revolts. Basically, it's just like a time period where there was a civil war. A lot of people aren't happy with the results of the civil war, so they're willing to take up arms in order to try to continue that war. So a lot of Pompey's job is basically just to put down these revolts. So he ended revolts in Italy and Spain. The revolt in Spain was led by this guy, Sertorius, who was a guerrilla fighter. He used kind of like guerrilla tactics, ambushing Roman armies and troops and stuff. So he was a real pain. In Italy, there was the Spartacus Revolt, which Pompey claims he put down, but really he was just kind of mopping up the leftovers that Crassus had already defeated. After that, for most people, putting down those revolts and having a triumph and all that stuff would have been a really solid career, and maybe they'd retire or just kind of go into politics full time and leave the military life behind. But Pompey doesn't really do that. Pompey continues to fight military campaigns. At this time, piracy is a big problem in the Mediterranean Sea. Basically, since the time of the end of the Punic Wars, with Carthage not being around, pirates have really started moving into the Mediterranean. The Romans were never really strong in terms of their navy, so they didn't have as much of a naval presence. So pirates would come in, they would do a lot of like kidnapping, and so they would take a person, and then either they would sell them into slavery to make some money off of them, or they would ransom them. If they were a wealthy enough person, they would ransom them for money, which is something that's going to happen to Julius Caesar soon. So Pompey, he decides this piracy thing is a real problem, so he's going to have to take care of it. And so basically, he gets the Senate to grant him proconsular power over all of the Mediterranean and 50 miles inland. So this is a special command. Now, most of the Roman Empire is based around the Mediterranean Sea. There's not a whole lot of the empire that is more than 50 miles inland. So basically, Pompey has control over almost all of the empire. He has some real power over all of them. So this is a major command. It would sort of be like if, I don't know, Jeff Bezos or something came in and he was like, I want the ability to be governor over, 40 of the 50 states in the United States, and the Senate just sort of like granted that to him. It would give him like enormous power, the ability to change a lot of things. So it's a really, really powerful command. It's almost too much power. It's king-like almost. All right, a proconsul it just means for a consul. You have consular imperium. So basically, you have the ability to command armies in almost every province in the Roman Empire. Basically, Pompey divides the sea up into zones, and he takes his fleet, and zone by zone, he sort of clears those zones of pirates until he traps them all in one place. And in about 3 months, the sea was pirate free. So his command was granted for 6 months. He does it in 3, and then he turns that power back over to the Senate, which is fairly admirable. Not many politicians would do the same historically in Rome or in the future. All right, and then the last thing we're going to talk about today is Pompey's conquest of the East. So basically, Mithridates, our old friend from Pontus, he starts causing some trouble again. Sulla put down his revolt, but let him remain as a client king to Rome. And Mithridates just sort of like waited until things seemed safe enough that he could start causing trouble again. So Pompey has to go east. He goes to Asia. This is, a coveted command because beating up Mithridates means you get to take a lot of money. And the kingdom of Pontus is one of the richest kingdoms in the Mediterranean world. So he goes, he defeats Mithridates, turns him back into a client king. While he's out east, he goes on sort of a conquering spree. He adds 2 provinces to Rome, Syria, which is roughly equivalent to the modern country of Syria, and he adds Judea. So that's kind of equivalent to a couple different countries, Lebanon, parts of Israel, stuff like that. He doesn't actually he does conquer the city of Jerusalem, but he sets up like a client kingdom in Jerusalem. So they only take the coastline as a Roman province, and they set up a client king in Jerusalem. So that's where like Herod and stuff from the Bible comes from. Their client kings of Rome. All right, to get this command in the east, Pompey enlists the help of up-and-coming senator and lawyer named Marcus Tullius Cicero. Cicero is super important going forward. He's going to have a big role in the Roman state. He'll kind of be part of the next generation of politicians. So he's a guy to watch out for. He speaks on behalf of granting him the command, and in return, basically Pompey jumpstarts Cicero's run for the consul in 63 BC. All right, so Pompey has basically conquered all of the east now. So he's defeated Mithridates, he's conquered Syria, and he's created the province of Judea. So there's a lot of new land added to the empire. So Pompey kind of has military glory. He also has a lot of money because he's been fighting these wars in a very rich part of the Mediterranean. So he's picked up a lot of money. So he has loyal troops. He's got money, and he kind of has glory. So he's like popular. People see him as a real leader. So there's a real concern, particularly amongst the senators, of what is Pompey going to do when he returns from the east, right? Will he basically take all that money and do like Marius and Sulla did and declare himself a dictator? And so that's kind of the big question. Will the young butcher, or will Pompey the Great impose his will on the Senate and make himself dictator? We'll see. Because moving forward, we're going to start to get into the life of Julius Caesar, who around this time is going to come into first an alliance with Pompey, and then eventually fight a war with Pompey. So we'll kind of see what happens with Pompey moving forward as we watch the rise of his greatest rival, Julius Caesar.